John, I was a little confused because I have a lot of doc friends who taught at the college and I thought they all used the same branding, insignia, logo. But I guess that's not the case?
Well, because of the addition of the affiliates,
Okay.
because we added Glens Falls Hospital, Columbia
Hospital,
Memorial,
yeah,
all those
right.
guys are now under the same brand.
yeah.
So
Okay,
that's where it is. That's where
All right.
the real change is.
Hey, and can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good.
as I mentioned to the others, I just got a call from Vinnie McCardle who won't be able to join us. He's had some issues arise at home and he can't break away. Brad, I saw OGS in the newspaper today looking for the spruce trees.
Need two every year.
Okay, and I don't have any on my property, but they're looking.
We always get some nice looking trees.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Hi, Sue. We got you connected now. Sue, can you hear us?
I can. There we
Oh,
go.
good. Good. Getting close. Maston. Hi, Maston. We've got you.
Hey, Tony, how are you? Hi,
Good,
everyone.
good. Mike is coming on board.
Great.
Here I am.
Good, Mike. We've got you.
Hello, everyone.
I'm thinking, hello, Jim. We've got you. You're connected. That's good. I was expecting Jim Sullivan, who may be tied up in an issue, but will be joining us. I think we've got enough to get started, and I am anticipating Jim to join us, not Vince McCardle. Peter, would you please explain before we start to everyone what the egg streaming means?
That's just our office is just recording the meeting as we need to do, and then it'll be posted to our YouTube account and then available for public view on our website.
Okay, fine. I thought you usually did that.
Yeah, typically I would record, but Kyle is here to do it for us.
Great. Is Matthew going to join us?
Matthew, we anticipate him joining us, yes.
Okay, well then maybe we should wait a minute or two longer to give Matthew and Jim Sullivan a chance to hook up. Speaking of, hi, Jim, you're all connected now. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. I had a little trouble, but we're
Oh,
on.
terrific. And Matthew is all connected now too. Good. I think we're going to get started. We have as close to a full house as I anticipated. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Has everyone had a chance to take a look and see if there are no corrections or omissions or additions? I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented from anyone.
I so move.
Okay, Joyce makes the motion to approve the minutes. Do we have
Second,
a second? And
Second.
and Alan seconds. Alan seconds it. I'm sorry. All in favor?
I
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed to the minutes being approved?
Aye.
Okay, the motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is my report, which is going to be very, very brief. As you all know, because we're all connected, this is a Zoom meeting. It started out as a in-person meeting, but because of availability of different people and reports from different folks, it was decided a Zoom meeting would be more convenient, and we shouldn't bring everybody into the conference room unnecessarily. However, as soon as we have more information and final reports, we will have an in-person meeting at the Egg to discuss perhaps just one item. That takes care of my report. All right, Peter, you're up.
I'm up.
Yep, Executive Director Search Committee report.
I believe that's John Regan's report.
Okay, you and John, take it away.
Thank you. We are expecting a final report. We were expecting it as soon as this week. However, the attorney's office has had COVID rip through it yet again. So we are anticipating a full report in the next week or so. Once I have that, we can set up an executive session meeting, but that's all I have on that.
Okay, fine. Peter, you have anything to add?
Nope.
Okay, moving on. Matthew, financial report.
Peter has provided everyone a financial summary report for the period from the beginning of the fiscal year through the end of last month. It shows our cash position to be rather healthy and our net income to be rather healthy. Looking at the notes at the bottom of it, we do need to note that there was some variance in how the budget was created. We got some notification from the auditors about how the SVOG money was to be allocated, the best way to be allocating it over the 2-year period that the loan is, or that the grant is being issued. So that's affected our budget line in a positive way, but in a large positive way. And also the OGS maintenance bill did go up after we had created the initial budget. So that's reflected in this new update. Right now we're experiencing a situation where we're able to pay our bills, and actually our customers and vendors are able to pay us, which is positive. We had a very successful re-entry into the the calendar year or performance year, September was pretty busy and October looks to be extremely busy as well. So from a fiscal standpoint, we seem to be pretty healthy, knock wood, and ready to take on the new challenges that await. Does anybody have any questions or specific concerns that they saw? Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, Matthew, maybe we could begin with the auditor. What was his name again? Please help refresh me.
This was UHY. Our audit contact was Braden.
Oh, okay.
And we're in the process of finalizing the numbers. We didn't have any issues, or I didn't have any issues with the way that the audit was created, but there are some follow-up items that they were waiting for that I had to get from different state agencies, and they were dragging their feet. So we did clean that up last month, and I forwarded them on to Braden to see if we could get this wrapped up. And I haven't heard back yet. So he's on my list to contact again this week. But I didn't have any concerns that were brought up during the audit this year. I'm sorry, Jim, you had
And about where are we in terms of the OGS cycle, the 5-year business about a new RFP and looking again?
that I'm in the process of putting together. You mean a new RFP for a new auditing team? Yes, that
Okay.
has to be. So that should be going out by the end of October at the latest, hopefully earlier. I'm
That's
sorry,
not
Jim. you had a-
mandatory though, is it? That's more of a
Yeah, it
guideline
is.
for OGS?
Yeah, we have to change audit firms on a regular basis, and it was our last year with UHY.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Jim.
Right, those are mandatory by federal rules, right? Because you can't have the same auditor over and over.
That's
Okay.
correct.
I noted just two things, Matthew. One is that our ticket sales, what we projected is much stronger. I think was it 48,000 or so more than we budgeted for thus far, right around that. I don't have it in front of me exactly, which is a good sign. And that some of our programming that we just struggled, jazz, for instance, we had some like Victor Wooten, 94% full. That's good. That seems to be good. Do we have new projections on potential sales as one part? Because I think this financial question dovetails into our other agenda items, frankly. Our net revenue looks like we're plus what, 338,000. Some of that's ticket sales, but a lot of that seems to be the federal one shot, right? So
Right.
we're still,
That's
you take
correct.
that away,
That's
we're up a little bit, but not a tremendous amount.
Mhm. That's correct. I can't speak. I can't speak to any projections that would be happening. I do know that we're sort of bucking the trend, because right now, if you look at some of the other venues and some of the other venues across the country, and especially in New York State, audiences are very slow to be coming back into live venue, really dependent on who the artist is. So, if there's an extremely popular artist that's got a lot of queue right now that's happening in social media, like for instance, this week, Randy Rainbow is coming into the facility. That show is sold out. But some of the other, artists that are usually reliable ticket sellers may not be hitting those numbers because the audiences are being slow to return. Peter, did you have something you wanted to add here?
Yeah, I would say first to remind everyone that we did budget very conservatively as far as ticket sales based on last year's experiences. And so, yeah, we are pleased to see that we're a little ahead of projections, although, the projections and the monthly projections are also made for the most part without really knowing who would be performing on those months, even early on. Yeah, we have had, surprisingly, as Matthew and Jim pointed out, over the summer, we did fairly well, like I said, with Victor, John Anderson, Todd Rundgren, below what they normally would have been, but not the 40 or 50% that we've been experiencing with some other artists. However, as we turn the corner, as Matthew said, we are going to start getting busy in October, but we are definitely facing some major challenges in ticket sales on certain concerts. Our renters are experiencing similar. We've had several cancellations because of lack of ticket sales, for things that went on sale, also for things that didn't go on sale and that they pulled. So overall, the climate is still definitely cloudy, although I think that it is improving for sure. But again, as we have said all along, the comedy presentations seem to be somewhat immune to COVID concerns, although, we have had some comedy presentations that have underperformed. We have a major artist that's coming in, Brian Regan, at the end of October, that originally booked 2 dates and brought it down to 1. So, it's still, we're going to need that federal money for sure to help us, keep us boosted throughout the year. And then just to complete Matthew's note regarding the shuttered venue operator grant allocation, we actually got 2 allocations. We got an original one of approximately $1 million and a second one of approximately 450. When we originally did, and Matthew, you can maybe fine tune this, but we took the first grant and we allocated it all for last year and the second grant for this year. And I think what the auditor did is they took the whole amount and allocated it over the full period of time. So our reports from last year, where we're showing much more coming in, when in the audit, it's much less. And then our budgeted amount for this year has changed accordingly. We didn't change the budget. I know we talked about doing that when the budget was adopted in case there were some changes. We can still do that, or we can continue just with the footnotes going forward.
I mean, it's a good, it would be great as people are coming back now, as a new pattern emerges, to maybe adjust. I was incorrect. It's 48,000 above what we budgeted on ticket sales. So that's a good directional change, even though we were conservative, knowing that we're going to run out of this one shot. So eventually, we need revenue to go up because our grants are going down, right? So we eventually need to know, are we hitting a happy medium or are we in big trouble, right? There's a point where this could topple over. It'd just be good to know what we're projecting out as a matter with these other issues that we have before us of hiring and security and other things. It would be good to know how this all works together.
Yeah, and we'll keep you posted on that for sure.
The audit committee met, audit committee consisting of Jim Sullivan and Vince McCardle and myself. And I think Jim had some comments with respect to the audit in that regard. Jim?
Yeah, sure. I know we're going to get some further revisions, I think, maybe from the auditor, but, as Matt said, it was a very clean audit. The only comment they really had was they'd like the AG to consult with them on the post-employment benefits number before we issue the final year-end statements. But it was just extremely good. They commented on that we got about $1 million from the SBA grants. We reopened in September of 21, and we had 89 events. They had about 61,000 people attend. Our revenue in 21, 22, operating revenue was about $1 million, and our expenses were about $1.5 million. So we had a loss of about 500,000, but that was made up by non-operating revenue from the contribution of New York State and the SBA grant. We had a healthy cash balance at the end of the audit period, 3/31, which was $2.25 million about. So the audit was as good, I think, as possibly could be expected. It was credit to Matthew for sure. It was just perfect.
I have a quick question, and we don't anticipate any ongoing federal grants at this point, do we?
No, not at this point.
Not of this magnitude.
I would not
Thank you.
suspect any further.
Right.
No.
Matt and Peter,
All
I
right,
did have I did have a question about, with inflation, obviously OGS went up a little bit, which is understandable. Great partner. What about, are the artists, expecting more, higher ticket prices or anything to make up for inflation, travel costs, whatever, stay in hotels, et cetera?
Artists are always looking for more money. There was a fleeting thought when we came back from the COVID break that they would be asking for less money, but that didn't happen somehow. But no, it's been pretty steady. Certainly their travel expenses mostly, are affecting where they're at. But we haven't seen a great increase in their asking, because again, for at least as far as the types of things that we present, they're facing the same situation in all the venues they're going to, where the venues are like, wait a second, our ticket sales are down still 30, 40, 50, 60%. We really can't afford the raise this year. This is not the year to do it. So we're not necessarily seeing that at this point, although, again, typically it goes up before it goes down, for sure.
I don't want to get too much off track, and I've never asked this question. I don't know if we've ever thought about it, but how do we determine a ticket price?
Well, the ticket price is determined on all of the costs involved in presenting the performance. Typically, when we submit an offer to an artist, we display all of our estimated costs, and then from that, we figure on a ticket price that is reasonable and that the number of people expected to attend could cover those costs and then some. And then if there's anything left over, if you will, in other words, if we meet expenses, then normally there's a split of the revenue after that between the artist, who of course gets more than we do. There are still some what we call flat fees, where we just pay them no matter how many come or don't come. But for the most part, they're based on a percentage. And we just figure the ticket price on what it will take to break even at a reasonable attendance. And
so the artist does participate, or their business manager, they do participate kind of in the ticket price?
Well, they approve it.
Yeah,
that's part of it. Sometimes they'll suggest what they would like the ticket price to be. A lot of times they suggest a ticket price that's lower than reasonable, and there's no way we can make the expenses by doing that. So we let them know that, and we adjust. And sometimes they suggest, well, and a lot of places we're getting X for tickets, and if we don't feel that our market could bear that, we bow out and say, we don't really feel that charging this much for tickets in our venue for this artist is appropriate, and we will offer based on what we feel. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So basically, yes, really a exercise in math and a break even, and forecasting what you think may happen. And sometimes it works out well, and sometimes it doesn't. As you know.
Thanks. So Matthew, the audit that Vince and Tony and I reviewed, are they going to reissue? Based on
they had asked for some follow-up.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that. So we're going to get another version to review.
Well, what they asked for in the follow-up shouldn't affect anything number-wise. What they were looking for were some certification questions, collateral issues. I don't foresee any changes number-wise to what they presented.
So are you saying that we should wait to approve the audit till we get the final version, or could do it now?
I would wait until we get the final version from them, and I apologize. I expected this to be cleaned up by the end of July at the latest, but there were some issues with tax and finance certifying collateral amounts that took a while to get. So as soon as they are able to interpolate that into their final notes, I'm sure they'll issue a final draft, and I would, or a final version, and I would wait till UHY presents their final.
Fine, that's exactly what we'll do. The audit committee is recommending that for the time being, we not approve the audit as a board function, but we wait until the auditor has completed some of the final, probably non-numerical changes or additions. And so we'll lay the audit approval over to the next meeting.
Okay.
Hey, Tony, I wanted to mention one other thing.
Certainly, Jim, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I know we got a big agenda, but Matthew, as you know, banks aren't paying much, my own bank included. We're not paying much on deposit accounts, but
Fix that.
pardon me?
Fix that.
Such a crack, Jim.
I would. Hey, we got to make a profit. But the treasury bills that you have used before, you can get them as low as 1 month, and they're paying like 2.25.
Yep.
If you can forecast out a little bit, I know cash flow might be tricky for you to predict, but 2.25 is pretty good, even if you roll them every month.
I completely agree, and I'm on that. I actually have an email out to Chris at Tax and Finance to discuss that again. It's just the amount that we want to tie up, and before I do that, I'll send out a notice to the members of the Finance Committee to get some feedback and to get some suggestions.
Yeah, well, it's all based on cash flow, obviously, and
Yeah.
you could do a lot of, you can predict pretty easily, I think, 4 weeks and get 2.25.
Definitely.
And then if you can go 6 months, you can get 3% or whatever.
I'd rather go out a longer period of time to do.
But I'd try to maximize that as best you can. All right, that's it, Tony. Sorry to hold everybody up.
No, you're not holding anybody up. In
Not at
fact,
all.
the audit committee would like to thank Matthew for his wonderful job and welcome you back from your COVID experience. I hope it wasn't too severe or too many headaches or whatever goes with it. But it's good
Thanks.
to have you back with us, Matthew.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, moving right along. The next item on the agenda is a discussion on proposed staff additions. Peter, you want to start that?
Bill Darcy, who's with us today, who's our production and operations manager, had sent me an email a couple of months ago, I believe it was in August, indicating that there were we were having some major staff shortages in the production department. This was not new news. They've been struggling with this forever, really, but we've always been able to properly staff events, over the years using per diem labor. We currently just have one, not counting Bill, who's a production manager. Kyle is our production coordinator. He is our only fully staffed position with benefits, and the rest of it. Rest of the positions are filled by per diem labor, hourly people. But that post-COVID, we've been struggling to fill a lot of these positions. This is not mine, and feel free to jump in here, guys, as needed. This is not unique to our venue. Many venues are experiencing this as well. And it was suggested that this needed to be addressed, and there was a recommendation brought forward to increase the per diem hourly rates to be able to attract some people who were going elsewhere because the rates were better, and that certainly makes sense. But also to consider adding some full-time positions to be able to engage the type of quality employees that we need for sound and lights and stage management and so forth. So Bill and I spoke a bit about that, and I told them I would bring that to the board for their consideration. And Tony and I were in contact about it, and obviously there's some concerns about what that would do to our budget going forward. And I checked in with Matthew as far as what benefits would cost and so forth. Bill subsequently sent me some job descriptions with salaries attached. And again, submitted that to Tony. And in an effort to get some more information for you today, I was in contact with Bill to try to get that. And subsequently, it was determined that Bill and Tony would meet to discuss the situation. And so I stepped aside. Tony asked me also to see what Matthew thought, and Matthew thought that we should, before we did anything, that we should, develop a business plan to see what it would take to support this going forward. So then, Tony, I'll let you go from there because you met with Bill and made some decisions from there.
Bill, you want to jump in here and tell us what's on your mind for these staff positions that,
Sure. Yeah, Peter basically framed the issue that we're having, what we're seeing. But just to go a little deeper, during the COVID shutdown, the term gig worker came up a lot. It went to the hospitality industry and the entertainment industry primarily. It was that per diem employee. It was that lower wage, commission-based or tip-based employee. That's more than a news story for us. We have experienced it firsthand. And you guys, I've watched more talent leave our organization in the last 12 months than I care to. Not on bad terms. They've left the industry. They've taken other opportunity in the industry. They've simply moved on. So when I do a little homework, I find out that the venue to the right and left, the venue in the similar market, the larger market, and the smaller market are maneuvering with this. I check myself constantly because I don't believe I watched and saw somebody give a gig worker a 20% raise in an 8% inflation year last year, but they did. And I went to Peter and we followed just to keep on board. A year later, and I get a contract, a rate sheet from a union labor source, and it's 40 to 65% increase depending on how they departmentalize the help they would be sending us. So then I go again and I look at some of these other venues, 15, 20% again in the second year. And I say, how are people sustaining this? So I'm real sensitive to the fact that the finance conversation that we had prior to this is trying to build back. And we're not saying, hey, we need this no matter what, but there is a crossroads. To Jim's point earlier, that there is a crossroads here. How far are we going to push this? Now that the demand is there to use the building more, like it was last spring, like it appears to be this fall, and when we keep up, because we're sieving help, and primarily the skilled positions, and these skilled positions, keep in mind, don't come out of the union hall. These aren't carpenters. These aren't commercial electricians. These are positions specific to our trade, specific to our industry, and I can't find them readily anymore. The lift is bigger this year. I said this to Tony this way a few weeks ago. The lift is bigger right now than it ever has been. And to Kyle's credit, he pounds the pavement to keep an eye on what's out there and who is available. We're managing to fill calls. But I made one more suggestion, Peter, in addition to rate increases and potentially securing a few of these people as full-timers. And I hate this, but I said it just to get it out there. I talked to him about watching the volume. Demand to use this facility was far less. We were keeping up, even in the post-COVID labor environment. We slipped hard last spring when the volume popped, and we're feeling it again looking into the fall. Maybe that adds some depth. Maybe that just leads to some questions. I don't know. You guys tell me.
I'd like to hear everyone's viewpoint on this issue, adding staff. We have already made some adjustments. Peter, do you want to discuss the per diem rate increases that we agreed upon so that that bill could be more competitive with the likes of Proctor's and the surrounding issues? That might help the board.
Yeah. The requested rate for the per diem rates were approved. I believe it's 32 for a department head and 26. That's per hour, by the way. 32 per hour for department head and 26 for a stagehand, which is, I believe, comparable to what other venues are paying in the market. So at least, we can be competitive in that way. But again, I think what Bill is saying is we will be even more attractive to employees if obviously we can offer guaranteed employment and benefits. And in the past, again, any full-time positions have been needed to be approved by the board. The other variance on this too is, and again, Bill, feel free to jump in here as appropriate, is that these types of positions are typically paid a guaranteed salary and with benefits, and they also get paid overtime after 40 hours in a given week. And right now, our employees, full-time employees, all of our full-time employees, whether they're administrative or production, are not paid for overtime. So that was another issue that that we were trying to address going forward, and that Tony and Bill were going to talk about. If we bring on these employees, how will, with paying them overtime, how that will affect the rest of the staff, and what the effect will be in doing that. So obviously, we don't want to have events scheduled and not be able to staff them properly. On the other hand, it's, again, we have a catch-22. If we have fewer events and we start turning away events, then we're going to have less revenue to deal with to pay people. So, it is a challenging situation going forward. And, that's as much information as I have right now.
Peter, to that point. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
No, go ahead, Bill.
I mean, I think sort of my view is that, look, you're the management, you know what the organization needs. If you need it and the industry does it and our budget can afford it, then fine, that's within your purview as management. I mean, if it's sort of our job as the board to sort of fiscally govern and have governance, but not sort of manage the day-to-day activities of what you need. And if you're saying you need it and the budget can hold it, I don't see why we wouldn't approve it.
Jim, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I don't disagree with John. I mean, we're more likely a policy board than a management board. We don't want to get in the way of the day-to-day operations. I do think the budget plays a role here. What is the total cost? I mean, in isolation, we'd pay you guys triple everything, right? I mean, I think you're all underpaid, quite frankly. I think the entire board thinks that, right? I don't think that is a question, but we operate within these fiscal realities that we have. I think the only place where it comes into play for us as a board is if the budget becomes problematic. That's why I asked, what do we think our projections are going to be? Because there must be a total cost of these two new employees. If you're paying healthcare, retirement, and a salary, that's a total cost, which is probably more significant than we think.
Indeed.
We know we have revenue of $338,000 because of most of it's a one shot. You don't want to get into a position where you're hiring someone and then laying somebody off a year later because you can't meet the revenue, because that's bad for the organization too, by the way, from a operational perspective. And if it creates a precedential value where you're now doing overtime where you didn't do that, you end up creating an inequality within the system. That's also something to be addressed. So as long as management is working through those issues and you're going to come back to us and say, we figured out a way to pay this is strong structurally, then I agree with John. We shouldn't be meddling in the day-to-day, but those are considerations for sure.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I just wanted to say I agree with everything that both John and Jim have said. I think it would be helpful, and I don't want to slow things down, but if we had a better understanding of, if we hire these two full-time positions, what does that save us on the per diem side, right? Is it essentially a wash? And I get it that having the technical skill available to us at all times and not being subject to the whims of, who's available as a per diem when, and, better to have people that know our facilities and can jump right in. If that's going to be essentially a wash because we're going to save on the per diems, that's great. And on the overtime issue, I'm just curious as to whether, do people have flexible schedules so that if there's a night event, does that mean that they're not coming in until 2:00 the next day so that we avoid having to pay overtime, except when it's absolutely necessary? I'm just curious as to how operationally that works.
That's a great point. Every schedule flexes in this industry. If I had an employee salaried with overtime, you've got to keep an eye to the overtime. There are other ways that this overtime is dealt with. This overtime is dealt with in hourly caps on the weeks, but that only allows you so much programming per week if you've got 2 full-timers as opposed to 6 full-timers. I'm not suggesting 6. Again, how many personnel hours do I have in a 7-day period? So yeah, we can wash it a lot of different ways, as long as we don't lock ourselves into some sort of a labor agreement that doesn't allow us flexibility. Does that answer, Alan? Bradley?
Yeah. And I guess, I am curious though about I agree. I'd rather we have full timers that know the place, but does it save us? Is it a wash because we're also saving on per diems that we'd otherwise be hiring?
To a point, yes. There will be times and there will be days and there will be periods of time, and these are the ones that concern us, when we're 2 and 3 events per day and 12 per week, where you're just calling for everything. You need all the help you can get. That won't pan that day, but at the end of the year, you watch the ebb and flow. You look back, did we make a good decision? Okay, based on 1 full-time hire. That allows us to consider maybe a second. Looking at it as we grow. Are we growing? Is this October, November a post-COVID spurt? I don't know. So I didn't want to go, I don't go too far either. I think it was Jim's point a minute ago, you hire 2 or 3 and you let 1 or 2 go in a year. No. But if we can secure a couple, we've done one other thing in the last several years. We were real heavy pre-COVID, and I'll bring it up. We added a lot of technology to what we provide to the client. It is now an expectation that I have qualified department heads, people who can run these specific, highly technical skill sets. So again, if we were a 4-wall rental, if I did not own all of this equipment, if everything was vendor-based, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But we'd be talking about what the cost of a vendor contract is for a year and a half. You buy it here or you buy it there, just trying to secure it someplace. You go to SPAC, it's all vendor-based and the labor is all unionized. So you have vendors to go to, but you're still spending on the cost, and the agreements with the vendors, the agreements with the unions are reflective of the industry, the trade, the flexibility that you need with your schedule and with your employees. So what I'm looking at here is just incremental build to this staffing the way we've done it traditionally in the post-COVID environment. Conservatively, don't jump at all of it at once, but we can build with this program, with this, with the programming of the spaces.
Thank you. Joyce, did you have a comment you wanted to make, Joyce?
No, I'm okay. I'm listening.
All right, good.
In agreement.
Oh, okay. Sue,
I did wanna-
did you
I did
want to
wanna
add
mention-
something to this?
I did want to mention something.
Oh, Jim, sorry.
No, that's okay. Just that, the Department of Labor, New York State laws, and probably there's some federal, but I think it's 52,500 now or something. Anything below that, it's pretty much mandatory to pay over 40 hours, I think. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is we have to be aware of the labor laws on paying overtime, and understand all those laws. Probably OGS can help us with those for sure. Maybe John knows a lot about that from Albany Med. I don't know, but we don't want to run astray of that law.
No. Sue, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, Bill, I had a couple of quick questions. Your
Sure.
per diem, do you get your folks from IATSE? Do you use like ACES or anybody like that? How do you garner your per diems?
A few different ways. The IATSE unionized labor is okay to a point. There are skill sets within that organization locally that we can use, but they don't always have most of the specific skill sets and the technical disciplines, video and audio and things like that. They are also the highest rate I can pay right now. I talked about a 40 to 65% jump year over year. That's what they presented. So I'm trying to hold off there when I can. Kyle's got feelers out. He's constantly got us posted on job boards, and any of the college kids passing through the area tend to be good candidates for us because they're in these schools that are well-funded, that are taught the latest of technologies, or at least something close comparable to what our requirement is. And so you'll get them in, break them in a little bit on us. The problem with that is they may have technical skill, but they're now leaving the college situation and they're going to a national or an international artist. They're expected to work in that level. It's another shortfall. You know, Kyle goes out there on the floor today and he's 4 people because he's got 3 very qualified novices. But our program is, you know, world class. So we go to the schools, we go to the union. Sometimes the vendors can do a little trade-off. That works both ways. I had one of the best sound engineers we ever had go to work for a local vendor this summer when we were slow, and she wound up staying with them. Again, we're back to what the market conditions are. Here's what's happening. It's all very fluid. So we're pulling from, different places.
Yeah, I was just curious how that happens. I remember, when I worked for the city, we didn't have any of the in-house equipment that you were talking about. So we worked with Billy Reinhardt. We worked with ACES and brought everything in. We tried to also work with him a bit with some of our functions in the convention center. When we needed the high-level AV, for example, the Martin Luther King celebration that's televised. But it is a very, it's a very sweaty situation when you're scrambling for high-tech, intelligent people to come in and use your very expensive light and sound boards. So
you're exactly right. I like the 4-wall vendor-based model. I ran it in different places for years, and you're just fighting the headwind of the vendor.
mhm.
Now I've got multiple employees. They're on the payroll. They're off the payroll. They take other work. They're gone for 3 months. They're back. Again, fluidity is just
Right.
situation.
And so you had mentioned at one point that are we thinking of starting looking for one person to bring on full time? Is the impetus to look at hiring both of these proposed positions at the same time? And again, what is as somebody else mentioned, what is going to be the total annual dollar amount we're looking at for bringing on these positions, and can we pull it off?
Well, I guess I'm looking for some guidance. I don't want to be the guy that breaks the bank, and I'm very sensitive to that. The
I think this is what we're
salary,
asking, but Bill, I think this is what we're asking. I think part of it as management, you guys have to bring, we don't want to, what you need to manage an organization, right? All our fiduciary, I think, is we have to approve the budget, make sure we're not in the red, those types of things.
Right.
You know the ballpark where you have to pay people in order to lure them into actually taking these jobs. So there'll be a total cost in that. So there'll be a total cost per each of these employees. We then have to take that total cost based on what we have now, factor that into the budget, into projected growth. That's why I asked about the projected growth one way or another. Because right now you can probably afford, just say roughly for the sake of purposes, all in with retirement, with salaries, there's $75,000, let's just say $80,000 per employee. It might be more actually with all the benefits. That's $160,000. You can get away with that now, but a year from now, you're going to be in the red again if you're with your projections, which means you're now in a position where you can't even hold on to these folks. I think that's what Brad was also getting at with respect to Does the per diem thing is it a wash? So what if we're replacing someone with a permanent person, then we know we're actually saving money, or what you have to bring those things to us. We're not smart enough on those details to consider, I think, is the issue we're trying to raise.
Peter, maybe you could jump in here, because what I'm thinking is another factor is so much of our business has become rental income. So there's a lot of chargeback to the client for the equipment that we're purchasing and maintaining, but also for the labor. So if we're being reimbursed for this cost, then our outlay isn't 100% of that $80,000 per employee. And I've not looked at what percentage of that we're taking back in on the chargebacks from the rental clients.
Yeah,
That allows us flexibility here, no?
yeah, that certainly is, again, and I think that the main difference is and how we've managed it to date, and again with congratulations and thanks to Bill and Kyle and everybody for doing it the way we've been doing it. When we determined goes back, dare I say, decades. Anyway, yeah, the whole idea is when we need them, we hire them and we pay them, and when we don't, we don't. So I think to Brad's point, when we look at the whole year, there's going to be typically, if you look at the past year, there were probably certainly days and weeks where we didn't have events. During those times, then we're not paying per diem employees to work events. If we have a full-time employee, then they're guaranteed employment during those times. And then when it's busy, yes, we pay them, and yes, we pay them overtime. And so that's kind of a double concern there. So looking at it, if you have a salaried employee, they're going to get paid whether they're busy or not. And so I think that's where, to Jim's point, is if we are able to maintain a steady source of events, we'll be okay. I mean,
that's for Peter. That's for you to tell us.
I realize that, and I'm telling you now. But exactly. So what?
So do you want a full-time person or do you want a per diem person?
In a perfect world.
In the world in which we live, do you want a per diem person or a full-time person?
Well, I would like to be able to provide you with some more information on the current situation and what it would cost to add either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 full-time positions. And
I think I should jump in here now, because we've had a very lively and a very good conversation, and I'm comfortable with a lot of Bill's comments and Peter's comments and John and Jim and particularly Sue. But it strikes me that right now at this board meeting, we're really not equipped to make a decision about hiring even one person. What we've already done is increase our per diem rates so that we're comparable with Proctor's. And as I look at the board, and this is probably my responsibility, we do not, and I don't know if we ever have had, Peter, no reflection on you, a personnel committee. And I think right now, what we need is to establish a personnel committee to meet with Peter and Bill and Matthew. Matthew, you're going to be on all these committees. There's no way to avoid that. To examine carefully all the issues that have been raised here, and then report back to the board your findings, much the same as the audit committee, consisting of Jim Sullivan and Vinnie McCardle and myself, do every year with Matthew and Peter. I don't think this board format right now, today, this minute, is remotely equipped to answer any of these questions, but should have that information. So I'm going to ask now to establish a personnel committee. Sue, would you be willing to serve on that? Sue? We lost
Yes.
you.
No, I'm sorry. I was muted. Yes, of course.
Actually, Sue, I think I've lost your picture. I'm not sure if it's on my
Yeah,
end.
no, I did. I took my video down. My Wi-Fi connection is not very strong, so I'm
Okay,
trying to.
all right,
yeah,
all
but
right.
I am
that's fine,
here.
as long as we have, okay, so Sue, maybe you could take a leadership position as well on this personnel committee, because your background with the state and doing events is clearly well beyond most of us who have not been working in that capacity. Matthew, you're on the committee. There's no way to avoid it because we need to analyze numbers. Brad,
Happy to serve. And Tony, I think my suggestion would be that this committee, working with the leadership staff, just come back with a recommendation to the next board meeting.
Absolutely.
Based on a business case analysis of how many full-time positions we'd like to recommend for the board's
Absolutely.
approval.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to volunteer to be on this personnel committee? No one is excluded. Okay, so
I'll be
that's
on
it.
it. I'll be on it, Tony.
Thank you, Jim, very much. Okay, so Jim Melantris also is going to join the group.
Only if
All right,
Avella,
so-
only if Avella does it and donates half of his salary for, no, I won't do that.
How about a third?
Okay.
We're
All
gonna make
right,
a budget deficit to Avella's salary. We can take a motion on that right now if we want.
Okay. All right, so now we're looking for a report from the newly appointed Personnel Committee headed up by Sue Cleary to make some recommendations to the board in a more detailed and affirmative way. I don't think we need to take a motion on that. We'll just move forward on that. Is that okay with everyone? Good.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay, all right, now we get to the next item on the agenda, which is security, and I'll briefly introduce that. A lot of the surrounding locations, a lot of the Broadway theatrical locations are moving toward more security entering their facility. And they ain't got facilities like we got with elevators and stairs. They simply have a one-way in and one-way out. But having that as an introduction, Matthew, I think I'd like to hear your comments on that since you have more exposure to other theaters and what they're doing and why they're doing it. Please.
I think in the notes that Peter handed out, we were talking about what security protocols do we need to investigate to make sure that our facility is safe and congruent to what else is happening with other venues in the area. So the idea was to engage with a security company to do a needs assessment and a security assessment and offer suggestions on how we might be able to offer our patrons a little bit more of a secure environment, because I'm sure that the conversation will be coming up with comments from patrons about safety. So the idea was to have a conversation about hiring a firm to come in and do an assessment to find out what we need, what we currently have. We may end up discovering that what we've got is fine, but certainly investigating what options we should be looking at. So that was the goal of this information.
Well, I'll be a little bit more specific. The last few times I went to Proctor's, they have a metal detector and you must pass through that. They have two, I wouldn't call them guards, but staff people that are clearly marked with, I don't know, a shirt or a vest. There was something on that was distinctive. They were very polite and it went very quickly. And once I got in, which was quickly, I wasn't upset, but I have asked a lot of my neighbors and others who go to the Egg, what do you think about passing through a metal detector? And they're all kind of different opinions. I think, now, Peter, don't we have a security company, K?
ANS, yes.
I think we should take this very seriously. And I think we should probably start with who's on the ground right now. And perhaps ask them to give us their suggestions about improving security, along with OGS, State Police, Albany Police, Albany Fire, and our staff. Can that be done? Can we pull all those divergent entities together? Because OGS is apparently not in favor, not in disfavor, but don't want to develop anything
Well,
Distinctly, Peter, help me with this.
yeah, let me clarify that. This was brought to my attention by Matthew when the firearm carrying law was changed, and we appreciate that. Bill has some concerns and has had some concerns over the years about this. What we did just basically is we went to, because we always follow with what OGS path leads us to. And we checked with them because they have metal detectors that they use for certain events. And we asked them if, they would be introducing these metal detectors for all of their events. And they said, no. We said, if we were to do it, would that be okay? They said they were all right with that, as long as we obviously purchased them and facilitated their use. In turn, the discussions with you, Tony, we decided to develop an RFP to go out to security consultants to see, as Matthew said, someone else besides ourselves to assess what our needs would be. We did create that, and it's been sent out. Unfortunately, we only received one response with a plan of consulting with us for that. And Tony also suggested, and I followed up on reaching out to the KNS Security, who we used, to see what their thoughts were. And he gave us some guidance on what his thoughts were, and is open to meeting with all of those entities should we be able to bring them together. I think the goal will be to have a plan that everybody adopts as their plan, that OGS is aware of, our staff is aware of, the security company is aware of, New York State Fire, so on and so forth. There's many issues regarding getting into the facility, getting out of the facility in an emergency, when we bring in medical personnel, and there's doors that are locked when we're not having public events that all need to be part of the conversation, I believe. So we wanted to bring someone in to help us sort through all of those. So right now, where this stands is we do have one RFP from a security consultant who could come in as a totally outside source, and we have interest and suggestions from our current security company to meet with everybody involved to develop a joint mutually agreeable security plan.
Are you asked, I guess I'm a little confused because this was sort of raised as we should look into some option, but it sounds like we've already chosen an option by getting it. We've issued an RFP for an analysis. So how much was the RFP, and we only got one response? How much was the RFP for? How much are we pursuing? How much are we willing to pay the consultant to do this work? How much do we max? What is over 50,000, or was it under the 50,000 threshold?
It was, and I think it was maybe about 30, I think, plus or minus with travel. And again, once Tony gives me the green light, I can send that along for everybody to take a look at. But
well, we've issued it, or we haven't issued it. I guess that's the fact.
We issued the RFP. We sent it out on
board chair approved the RFP. So I guess as a board, updating us on where we are.
Correct.
Okay. So I think it should, Tony, I don't know what the question for the board is. It was sort of framed to us a little differently, that we were saying what we should do. It seems like we have an RFP process. I think security is an important thing. I do think.
Well, I think maybe, Peter, we should be sending the entire board the results of the RFP, which is really quite professional.
But that's not the question. I guess this conversation started differently than where Peter ended it. It started off as, should we do something? But it seems like we've already taken, which is fine, but let me just finish. So I think we should let the consultant come in. We have the money for it. It's more than just metal. I agree with the staff that the security issue is we should make sure that we have up-to-date security across the board. It's not just about metal detectors. What happens if there is an altercation based on a metal detector? Who takes charge? We have door entry places all over the place, not in the egg theaters themselves, but in the state facility. which sometimes you can get into, sometimes you can't. Yeah, I think we should do a threat assessment. I think that we should do it comparatively to what other institutions, not just Proctor's. I was just in Great Barrington's, a small theater like ours. They don't have security like this. I don't think that's smart. But what's the comparative analysis? Yeah, we should have an up-to-date security assessment to make sure our patrons and our staff are, protected as much as possible in this world. So I don't disagree.
Agreed.
Have we had
Right,
any
so-
of our, performers ask about security measures or request metal detectors?
We have not, I should say what our current policy is we do have a security firm that we use, K&S Security, as we mentioned. And we basically schedule them based on the staff and the artists in conversation with what the assessed risks are. And that can be anywhere from, we always have an EMT on hand, and then anywhere from 1 to 8, I guess, maybe we've had more in the past, but up to 8 security guards, either just observing, unless it's requested that there's a bag check. We can also do metal detection through wanding, which may or may not be as effective as metal detectors. I don't know. That's why we need a professional. And again, so right now, that's what our, how we go forward with security in that way. I don't believe we've had any issues where any artists have asked for anything beyond that specifically. I don't think that they'll have a problem with it if we decide to introduce metal detectors, but anyway, that's where we're at currently. And as Jim said, we have the proposal, we could bring in the totally outside force to assess the situation and bring back a recommendation of what they feel under our facility and market and risk factors, what would be the best way to go forward.
Thank
I
you.
would, I would,
Go ahead.
Can I bring in another factor?
Certainly, Joyce.
Are we checking any vaccination requirements? I went to the theater this week and had to present a copy of my vaccination and my ID. Are we doing anything like that? Has there been any discussion of the safety precautions that we're asking for, in addition to violence to the pandemic?
At this point, we are not requesting vaccinations. We did at one point when it was agreed to in cooperation with OGS and what they were up to. When the risk factor went down, it was mutually decided that we would not ask for vaccinations or boosters or masks for that matter, unless it was requested by the touring artists. So that's currently our policy, is we are not checking it. And again, that can change depending on, what the perceived risk factors are.
Because that's also a security issue.
Oh, absolutely. And when we were checking for vaccination cards, we had hired a lot more security guards to do that, to help us with that, because they were the ones who were doing it, not our volunteer ushers. So that was, again, major increase in costs for us when we were doing that. Not that we would not do it because of that, but right now, not to get too deep into it, but yeah, it's an issue that went both ways. And as far as audience perception and satisfaction, and again, it's just a trade-off that we've dealt with as far as what's best for the safety of the facility. Currently, it's been mutually agreed that it's not necessary to be vaccinated or masked unless requested otherwise.
Okay,
I just
well, we
had-
do.
I
I'm
just-
sorry, who else would like to speak up? Anybody?
it's Jim. I just
Yeah,
had a
Jim,
thought.
sorry.
I just had a thought, the Senate and Assembly, they have a viewing gallery and stuff. They must have a security consultant, or maybe they just use the state police as recommendations, but I again, I just think in the Senate and Assembly must have some
It used to be, Jim,
security protocol.
it used to be the state police in the Capitol. Now it's a private security, which short of the state police that they do to get into the building, you have to either have a card or you go through metal detectors. So they have a metal detector system, and the state police do patrol the Capitol. So, and I think they patrol the egg area too, just because it's part of the state facility, but they don't want our security.
They're clear with us, Jim, that they are the law enforcement authority on the complex, not the event security authority, but they are the law enforcement authority, absolutely. And to sum it up, with the vendor, what I'd be hoping to get is screening, surveillance, and response operations out of them. Once we have that, then we go to the New York State Police and to the New York State Fire and to all the authorities that we need to work with locally. With those three items relative to our building and how it operates, that's when we incorporate everybody else locally that we need to get with. We bring everybody in now, we'll never get a consensus. Screening, surveillance, response operations, three keys. We'll have a security plan for that building, and then we go to the local authorities to get that blessed. That's what I would do.
I think the assessment's important. I think it's a great first step that you guys have taken on this. I mean, I think to get the thing done is good.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, can I ask a question where we are in the procurement process? Obviously, that's an issue we always worry about here at OGS. Sounds like we got an RFP that went out, got one proposal back. Has there been an evaluation of that proposal? Who's going to be evaluating the proposal, both for technical expertise? Do they have the skills that we're looking for? And is the price reasonable? Those are really the two questions that need to be answered. Is that a staff issue? Is that a board issue? And if it's $30,000, does that need board approval, or does that can that be approved by staff?
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend a security committee, if you will, or certainly a member of the board to be able to look at this with us. And obviously our operations staff to be part of this process. And if I have board members.
But Brother Brad, I think, is asking a different question, which is, do we have to, as a board, do we have to approve this?
Yes.
This
Yes.
RFP?
Oh, certainly.
Yes.
Well, you've already put out the RFP.
But approve the award. That is what you're saying, Jim. Yeah. So
Yeah.
someone's
At
got
what
to,
point,
we have to
right.
evaluate the proposal. Let's do that now.
All right, Peter, send out both of the proposals, the more finished one and the single page analysis, and we'll carry on the conversation. But I think you make a good point. It would be probably it would be advantageous to have a working group. Again, call it the security working group, if you will, to try to go over these things along with staff. Any objections to doing that?
I think you should have the independent analysis done first and see where you go from there. I mean, I think.
All right, okay.
First.
Fair enough. Okay, so then at this point, Peter, you and staff go through what you've already uncovered and then bring it to the board at the next meeting.
What I will do is I will send what I have to all the board members at this point so that they have some time to take a look at it, if that's
Sure.
okay. Yeah,
Absolutely.
There's no need to wait. And then because it's all there, ready to go, it's ready to go for this meeting.
Absolutely.
And then we can take the next step from there, get any feedback, and then and then go through the approval process.
Fine. All right, I think that handles everything on the agenda. Peter, you're down as the executive director's report, but I think we've gone through every issue that could possibly come up.
I agree. I will just refer you to the activity report. That gives you an idea of what we've been up to. Other than that, I have nothing additional.
Terrific. Anything else to bring up by anybody on any other subject? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Brad, second.